I've gotten a lot of questions from people asking me to cover NPC and demigod lore first. Some of the questions include, why did Miquella and Melania march on Radon when Radon seemed to have a vow with Miquella? And things like, did he have to die? Did Melania weaken him for us? What's going on with that? And a lot of the intentions regarding some of the demigods and NPCs I actually can't get into until we understand the rules of the Realm of Shadow, because I think that dictates a lot of the choices that the demigods are making. They're trying to kind of play the hand that they've been dealt with the rules that they have. So let's get into those rules. That's what today's episode's about. It's going to be the rules of the Realm of Shadow. We know that at some point in the story's history, Queen Marika decides to usher in her Age of Gold and seals away the Realm of Shadow. We'll get into why in another video, but the point of me bringing this up is that this causes a division of a once singular realm into two different planes. We also learn from NPC Enya in the base game that she also sealed away the Rune of Destined Death, or the Forbidden Shadow, which I think plays into this a little bit. There's been this separation between life and death. We get a hint that during the story trailer with the line, "An affair from which gold arose, and so too was Shadowborn," that this is the case. But it's also further confirmed with the Suppressing Pillar lore, which declares that this is the very center of the Lands Between. So even though the Realm of Shadow is separate, it is very clearly a plane that used to belong in the Lands Between. So how did Marika achieve this? Obviously, she was like, at the Elden Ring, we've talked about this before, is like the source code of reality in this setting, and she's like kind of gone about separating it and, you know, messing with reality a little bit. But I also think that there's some really cool lore regarding her background as a seamstress and Radagon's background as a seamster. We know that Radagon, Marika's other self, is proficient at sewing cloth that has magical and mystical properties, and this is supported by items that we've talked about a long time ago in the past. Marika has the Mimic's Veil, a veil that casts an illusion that allows the wearer to appear as something else. That is known as Marika's Mischief, and therefore associated with her. We have the Concealing Veil, which was a veil used by the Eternal Cities and the Black Knife Assassins, who are Marika's kin, which allow users to disappear when at a distance. We have the veil on the Black Knife Assassin armor, which obfuscates their face, the Golden Sewing Needle that used to belong to Radagon, which we can give to Bok to alter demigod armor, and the baldachin that's located in Queen Marika's bedchamber, which resembles the baldachin that is concealing the Shadowlands, or the Realm of Shadow. So this other place that used to belong to the Lands Between then has become a dumping ground for death and other things that Queen Marika wishes to suppress. Enter Helfin Steeple. This is an item that I didn't think was going to come up at all. I assumed that the Helfin and the Lampwood were just kind of like some weird myth or a belief system that popped up, like a folktale almost, because Miyazaki loves to do that a little bit. Like, he'll add some flavor text or regional lore about a land in a distant place. I thought that Helfin Steeple was kind of like this. It was like maybe a belief from like a particular group, like the Caden Riders or something, regarding the afterlife, but I didn't realize that we were actually going to potentially go there in the DLC, so let's break that down a little bit. The greatsword is patterned after the black steeple of the Helfin, the lampwood which guides the dead of the spirit world. The lamplight is similar to Grace in appearance, and it is said that it can only be seen by those who meet their death in battle. While in the church district of the Shaded Keep, I realized that the spires resembled the Helfin steeple a little bit, which acts as this game's Valhalla. There's also a cute little nod to Valhalla with Freya, as she can be found in a field starting the DLC, and in Nordic mythology, Valhalla belongs to Odin, but Folkvang belongs to Freya, which is like this big field of reeds, which is also an afterlife. Super cool imagery that's being used here, but I digress. I was having a conversation with another content creator, Manus Celeste, who is a Twitter content creator. They do a lot of like Elden Ring lore posts, and we were talking about the Helfin Steeple and the way that death is being processed and suppressed in the Shadow Realm, and another user, Dry Cola, responded with something else that they noticed. The boats around the Shaded Keep are the To Be a Mariner boats. They're the Gravekeeper boats, and they're being used to burn dead bodies to ash in the Realm of Shadow, which replaces the original process of death. Originally, when everything used to be one, the process of death was dictated by the Deathrite birds, and they would burn both the body and the soul of those in their kilns to create like a ash. In addition to this, we also get Helf and Steeple from a Tibia Mariner.
I have a boat.
So there's this connection between the Shadow Keep and the Tibia Mariners and the way that death is now being processed, which is super cool. But these little references to Valhalla was kind of like clicking into place with me. You know, Karo's grave, that's in kind of like the southern part of the map. First off, that name is suspiciously close to Charon from Greek mythology. Charon carries the souls of those who have been given funeral rites across rivers that separate the worlds of the living and the dead. So we're having like an entity that's able to traverse both planes and carry souls from one place to another, which is a really cool enemy design given the fact that they act as necromancers in the Lands Between, and they're able to reanimate the dead utilizing either Deathroot or like their songs. But another really cool visual motif that's being used here is the red spider lilies that cover Karo's grave. And in both China and Japan, the red spider lilies are believed to guide the dead spirits into the next life during a reincarnation cycle. And sure enough, we seem to see the ghostly manifestation of the grave violet item in the Shadow Realm to help guide us into the Lands Between, potentially. So we're kind of seeing like there is a veil and there's two sides of the veil. And so we're seeing, when we're in the realm of shadow, we're kind of seeing what ghosts see when they see the grave violets, because the Tibia Mariners use grave violets for necromancy. So we're kind of like, if we were a lost spirit, we would follow those flowers into the Lands Between via spirit summoning. Another really weird item that also kind of establishes that there's this veil between the spirit realm and the realm of the living is the fact that the Mimic Tear larva item exists as like a spirit in the Shadow Realm, because it's established that it's not quite corporeal and not quite a spirit on both sides. So we're seeing that it has this like weird in-between property. So that's a really cool like little artistic detail that even though it's the same item, it's visually distinct when you're seeing it from the realm of shadow. What I'm trying to get at here, though, is that for all intents and purposes, this realm has been repurposed into an afterlife, and it's referencing various instances of the afterlife in real-world mythology. This is also likely the reason why Radon had to die in order for his vow to be fulfilled to Miquella. He needed Radon's soul to be moved into the realm of shadow, because that is where the Divine Gate is located. And it's likely that he's using Mohg's body because Mohg acted as like his Uber driver into the realm of shadow. But I kind of wonder if it's because he like has horns, if that is like a component of it as well. And I'll get into that in another video. But yeah, this is why Radon had to die first in order for him to be reborn. This is also likely why Miquella's cocoon had to be sabotaged and why Miquella had to die as well, because his physical body needed to die in order for him to traverse the other side. I think in addition to that, alongside a lot of the red spider lilies and like the Japanese myth and like mysticism that's happening with the design philosophy of that area, it makes sense too that Saint Trina is cast down into this pit because it almost echoes like an inverted version of the Izanagi Izanami story of Japanese mythology, where there's a brother and a sister and one of them gets abandoned in the underworld. And so we quite literally see like this big, deep, dark tunnel that is the fissure that is where we find Saint Trina. And so it's interesting that we're getting all of these like mythological references to death. It seems very intentional, but now we know kind of why Miquella had to do the things Miquella had to do in order to get Radon to the other side and in order to get himself to the other side. But now I want to talk about how. I want to talk about the visual representation of the Boaz and Jacquin pillars that are constantly being represented throughout Belurat and then also at the very tippy top of the tower. I've referenced these pillars in previous speculation videos, but these are the Solomonic columns that are Roman depictions of the two pillars, the Boaz and Jacquin pillars, the divine pillars that are in Abrahamic religion, and they refer to the first temple of Solomon that is located in Jerusalem. While Rome is obviously a very long ways away from Jerusalem, the Romans attempted to depict these pillars, and they became commonly used as an esoteric symbol of the Rosicrucians and the Freemasons. also around the 1900s, they were then reused in tarot card esoteric symbolism. If you're a tarot card reader, you're likely familiar with this symbol. It is on the High Priestess tarot card, the J and B pillars that you might see. If you're also a Persona player, you may you may recognize this. But they represent being in balance of opposing forces. So in Western mysticism, if you're standing between these two pillars, you're kind of being seen as a divine figure who is like in equilibrium. But also, if you're standing between these pillars, you are able to conduct divine miracles such as healing. These two pillars allow for various prophets to heal the blind or, heal somebody with ailments. And in a really famous painting done by Raphael titled The Healing of a Layman, it depicts this. I quite literally think that the pillars around Belurot and the spiral motif that we're constantly seeing reference both in-game lore, which is the Crucible Vortex. What? Crucible Vortex. I can talk. Crucible Vortex. And it's also referencing the Divine Gate of Miracles, which Radon is revived between. So we're seeing a divine miracle happening with the revival of Radon. The funny thing is, in tarot and in other symbolism, the entity that's depicted between the pillars, like I said before, is like in balance or in internal equilibrium. It usually means you're able to make like wise or intuitive decisions, but both Marika and Mikola are not in balance. They both portray their other selves at different points in time for different reasons, and they both have motivations that seem to be driven by things that are not necessarily like fully selfless. Like I do think that Mikola's original intentions had to do with his siblings, but I'll talk about that in another video. But I do think that the abandonment of Saint Trina makes him not in balance. Like he is out of equilibrium, and I think that that's very intentional imagery that's being evoked there. But in addition to the Crucible Vortex, there's also a cosmic and celestial function for these spirals that we see, and we find out that they actually perform a function for the character Meteor. Her spiral tail allows her to communicate with other outer gods like the Greater Will, and I kind of wonder if this spiral serves as a means of divine communication and intervention. I've been calling her and Emir's staves divine cell phones, and the twisting of the two fingers with the celestial eye on top that can peer into the cosmos is actually something that we've seen before. Specifically in Bloodborne, we've seen the lumen flowers, which are depicted as sunflowers. They look like an eyeball, like an iris, and they are used to face like a cosmic truth or like a divine truth. And so the living failures are able to use the lumen flowers to commune with these like celestial outer gods. I also think too that Mikola's needle, being an object that allows us to completely cut off intervention from outer gods, has this spiral and this like celestial eyeball imagery. It's also like the hermetic snake imagery that we've seen before, but it has like a function in the game too. That's really similar to like Meteor's staff and the maternal staff. Those are the same staffs. The other staff, Emir's staff. For the mortal characters in the game, we do find that suffering allows us to commune with divine gods or like take in the influence of outer gods. So we don't really need divine cell phones per se, but we just need an intense amount of suffering. So for example, the fire giants are able to rip off and burn parts of themselves to then take in the influence of the fell god. Or we see Melina get opened up to divine suffering when Torrent gets burned during the Frenzied Flame ending. We see Romina gets burned and she's able to take in the outer god of rot. Melania stabs herself and she's able to take in the outer god of rot. There seems to be this kind of sense of like, I guess it doesn't have to just be mortals, it can be the demigods too, but any degree of suffering or like asceticism or like despair, lamentation, those kinds of things allow you to be able to take in the influence of an outer god. But yeah, it seems like the spiral and the eyeball allows you to like receive instructions, so that's also like another really cool function for this like double pillar spiral motif. But I'm going to be making a video about the Crucible, and Ra, I'm going to be making a video about like the Grand Dam in Belurot and some of the Belurot visuals that have the spiral, so you'll hear me bring that up a couple times. But yeah, this video is already too long. I know it's not as long as some of my other longer format content, but yeah, this one just needed to be done, I think, for any of the other videos to make sense. So, okay, bye! This is a little PS because I realized it would be really silly of me to not mention it in this video in addition to my Bellerat video, but I absolutely think that the city of Bellerat is building the Divine Tower of Babel. I definitely think it's like a reference to that story, and I think they were using this tower to try to reach the Divine Gate that I was talking about earlier in this video. So yeah, I think that that is the purpose of why they were building stuff out of people. I'll go into it in more detail later. Okay, goodbye!